Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Rod Woodson is one of the greatest defensive backs in the history of football. He's an 11-time Pro Bowler, a 6-time first-team All-Pro, a member of the All-1990s First Team, a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the Defensive Player of the Year in 1993, and is on the NFL 75th Anniversary Team and the NFL 100 Team. Woodson is one of the best to ever do it, and he's had tons of incredible games in his career to show for it. There was the time that he was on the 49ers, and he had 3 interceptions against the Saints in 1997. There was a time where he was on the Raiders, and at the age of 37, had 3 picks against the Titans in 2002. There was the time that he was on the Ravens, and as a 34-year-old free safety, had 4 pass breakups in a game against the Bengals. But in the 258 career games that Woodson played, perhaps the most remarkable was one where his stat line was not very impressive on paper. 12 snaps, no tackles, no picks, and 1 pass breakup. At Super Bowl XXX, Rod Woodson did this, just months after recovering from a torn ACL. This is the story behind Woodson's remarkable comeback. Before talking about the Super Bowl, we need some context as to how we got to this point. Entering the 1995 season, Woodson was still one of the best cornerbacks in football, as he was coming off of another Pro Bowl and first-team All-Pro season. And entering opening day of the year, it seemed like it was going to be business as usual. The Pittsburgh Steelers were taking on the Detroit Lions, and Woodson was getting the start. Both the Steelers and Lions made the postseason the year before, and Pittsburgh entered this season as one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. So this was a pretty anticipated game to kick things off. Woodson made an immediate impact in this one, helping to tackle Barry Sanders on Detroit's first offensive play of the season. But on the second drive, things turned disastrous. On 3rd and 7, Scott Mitchell hits Sanders on a simple swing pass. Woodson completely whiffs on the tackle, and Sanders picks up 8 yards to keep the drive alive for a first down. Why did Woodson miss the tackle? Because his foot got caught in the artificial turf. At this point in the 90s, artificial turf was being criticized by many. During one game at Veterans Stadium a few years later, there was a sack that took place solely because the quarterback tripped on the turf. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. In the preseason that year, you had guys like Ajana Carter, Scott Davis, Brian Williams, and Dave Brown get injured on plays where they most likely would not have been injured if they played on grass. But just like that, Woodson was down. He blamed the turf at Three Rivers Stadium, saying, "I played on turf for 9 years, and sooner or later it's gonna grab you." Even though the Steelers won the game 23-20 at the last second, for most people, this was a bittersweet win, because even though Pittsburgh got the win, Rod Woodson was done for the season. He had a torn ACL. That's something you don't come back from. It was the most serious injury of his career, and nothing else even came close. And everyone was expecting that he wouldn't be able to play for the rest of the season. That is, everyone except for Rod Woodson. 1 week later, on September 11th, Woodson was in Colorado when Dr. Richard Stedman operated on his knee. And as crazy as it sounds, Woodson was awake and alert during the operation. As Woodson said, "I have to see what they're doing in there. I want to make sure that they weren't making any mistakes. I was just trying to figure out what's in there." Even though Woodson was on crutches in the month after the surgery, he was lifting his weights to keep his legs in shape. And somehow, he was able to convince head coach Bill Cowher to not deactivate him, saying that he was hopeful that he'd be able to return for the playoffs. Cowher decided to keep Woodson on the active roster for another 3 weeks and go from there. And it's obvious that while Woodson was out, the Steelers were missing his presence. In 1994, the Steelers allowed the fewest passing touchdowns in all of football. In 1995, they ranked 18th out of 30th in that category. And there were a few games, like when Bengals quarterback Jeff Blake had a perfect passer rating and threw 3 touchdowns in a 27-9 victory on Thursday night, that probably would not have happened if Woodson was there. But Woodson and the team were still holding on to hope. Somehow, Woodson's recovery was going incredibly well. Woodson wasn't able to make it back for the regular season, but the good news was that Pittsburgh made it to the postseason after going 11-5, winning the AFC Central, and getting a first-round bye. When Pittsburgh made it, the door was still open. After Pittsburgh defeated Buffalo in the divisional round, Woodson was able to return to practice for the first time in 4 months. The Wednesday before the AFC Championship, he was even able to intercept a pass in practice, picking up right where he left off. However, despite practicing for a few days, Cowher decided to not use him against the Colts. As Cowher said, "Just looking at him working, I didn't think he was ready quite yet. It's been 4 months since he practiced." Understandably, Woodson was upset at Cowher's decision, saying that he was disappointed. However, Cowher left the door open for Woodson to return for the Super Bowl. Cowher said that he didn't rule him out of anything if they were able to beat the Colts and advance to Super Bowl XXX. This was the second straight year the Cowher Steelers made it to the AFC Championship, and unlike the previous year, where the San Diego Chargers stunned them, they were able to beat the Indianapolis Colts in a 20-16 nail-biter that might have been the greatest AFC Championship ever played. The win not only gave Pittsburgh their 5th conference title in franchise history, and not only sent them to the Super Bowl for the first time in 16 years, but it meant that Rod Woodson, after tearing his ACL just 4 months before, was about to do the unthinkable and play in the Super Bowl. What's funny about this whole situation is that when the Super Bowl rolled around, the only one that seemed to be concerned with Rod Woodson playing was Rod Woodson. He said that he didn't want to upset the defense and hurt people's feelings, since there were players on Pittsburgh's secondary who had played all season and helped him get to this point, only to get reduced playing time with his return. But while Woodson's concerns were noble, they were pretty laughable. Defensive coordinator Dick LeBeau said that this wouldn't be a problem, as did defensive backs coach Tim Lewis, who said that every defensive back on the team realizes that this guy is probably the best who's ever played the position. In the days leading up to the game, Woodson described himself as 80 to 85% from a health perspective. But that was good enough for everyone. Safety Kordell Stewart said that even though Woodson isn't totally healthy, that 90% of Rod is better than 100% of a lot of defensive backs. The plan was to have Woodson play some third down snaps, and while he wouldn't get the start, he'd definitely get the chance to play in some situations that dictated zone coverage. And with that, it takes us to January 28, 1996, at Sun Devil Stadium for Super Bowl XXX. Sure enough, Rod Woodson played in the game, playing 12 snaps. And on third down, the Cowboys looked his way. Troy Aikman dropped back to pass and looked for Michael Irvin. Sure enough, it fell incomplete because the pass was broken up by none other than Rod Woodson. 4 months after tearing his ACL, he was breaking up a pass in the Super Bowl. Even though the Steelers lost this game, primarily because Neil O'Donnell thought that you were supposed to throw to the guys with stars on their helmets, Woodson's efforts did not go unnoticed, as he said that his knee felt fine during the game. Oddly enough, Woodson was not the first player to ever play in a game the same season after tearing an ACL, as in 1971, Joe Namath tore his ACL in a preseason game in August, but came back in November. But he was the first to ever tear his ACL and then play in the Super Bowl. Woodson would eventually get back to the Super Bowl, as in 2000, he was a starter on the Baltimore Ravens. This time, he was fully healthy, and was able to hoist the Lombardi Trophy when his Ravens won 34-7 over the New York Giants. I made a video about that game if you want to check that out in the upper right corner. And this is not the first video that I made about Rod Woodson, as I made a video about the time that he played wide receiver for the Steelers shortly after this game if you want to check that out in the upper right corner as well. But I think Bill Cowher said it best when talking about Woodson. He said when they said you couldn't come back, that was his motivation to come back. And with all the great games that Woodson played in his career, this might be the defining one. To come back from a torn ACL and play in the Super Bowl 4 months later, that is the definition of resiliency. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JarGator9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping with the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.